Welcome back to Divorce Den, everyone. Today I have the pleasure of speaking with Jill Kaufman, a therapist, a divorce coach, a mediator, and a co-parenting expert. After going through her own difficult divorce, Jill has made it her life's mission to help others not have it so tough. So her book, her online course, and her transformative group coaching help people and parents navigate this overwhelming process of divorce, both emotionally and strategically, with less stress, more confidence, and a greater sense of peace. Jill provides one-on-one and group coaching to parents who are going through divorce so that they can protect their children and their finances and successfully come to an agreement without litigation. And everyone knows I never stop talking about not going to litigation. And this is true even if you have a difficult ex, and I speak about that all the time too, that there are out-of-court options that really can help. Jill is here to share her expertise on the importance of effective co-parenting, really underserved need for people, the difference between coaching and therapy, which a lot of people get confused, even attorneys, and how these approaches can impact your children, not just now, but well into adulthood. So thank you so much for joining me today, Jill.
Thank you for having me. I'm glad to be here.
So one of the biggest challenges for co-parenting during and after divorce is the ability to really put the children first and really think about their needs and how this, again, is going to affect them today, tomorrow, and down the road. So in your experience, why is it so important that the co-parenting is a key building block of, making your post-divorce life for your children the best that it can be?
So they've done a lot of research about the impact on children when versus an intact family versus a divorced family. And the biggest impact is the relationship between the parents. So whether you have an intact family where the parents fight or a divorced family where the parents fight, that's going to negatively impact the children. And so if you can you don't have to be best friends, but if you can have a good, respectful working relationship with your co-parent, you will avoid a lot of the negative impact of divorce.
Yeah, and I think that that's really important for people to hear because it's not about staying together or getting divorced, which is so many times what we hear in the media, what we hear put on us that don't get divorced for the children. It's not necessarily about whether you're divorced or not. It's about how are you communicating with the children? What's the process that you're choosing? And how are you showing up for your kids? So that's really important to hear and to understand.
Absolutely. And it's not easy because, you're getting divorced for a reason. There's something wrong with the relationship. So, you really have to try to put your emotions aside and do a shift in the way that you're thinking about the other person. Because when you were married, you had to, work through everything together and you had to care about what each other thought and felt. And you really it was a completely different relationship than the relationship that you have as co-parents. And as co-parents, it's more like a colleague or a coworker where you want to be respectful but you don't have to agree on everything. You don't have to get them to understand your point of view. You don't have to, do the same things that you had to do when you were married to each other. So
Yeah, that's a great analogy there, right? To think of them as a coworker, someone who you're not always going to agree on, but whatever project you're working on, here it would be your children, you really want to be able to be on the same path. So what do you think are some strategies that you recommend for parents who are going to be these colleagues to start to do that, to start to really focus on their kids' needs and how to communicate more effectively?
well, I talk to people all the time who are divorced for, a certain amount of time, and they're still extremely emotional about the other person. And I get that. You have so much history with someone, it's very hard to just get the emotions out, But if that is something that's going to be hard for you, get help. Either a therapist or a coach can help you kind of process the information and heal and grieve the loss. and move forward. Because if you don't do that work, it's going to be a lot harder to co-parent with somebody. And it takes time. You can't do this right away, especially when you're going through divorce, it's going to be emotional. But some good tools are journaling, writing down your thoughts. I have people who do like 5 pages a day of thoughts and they just dump it all out there. Um, and that's a good way to do it. Support group is another good way, therapy, coaching, all there's so many ways. Drawing, people are very creative and they can draw things. So you want to get all that emotion out so that you can be in a better place emotionally so that you can be not as emotional. And another good tool is to, when you communicate with each other, you want to take your time. So if you get a text or an email, you don't want to shoot back something right away. You want to think through it. You want to maybe, put it away for a little while and think about it. Because usually when you react, you're not right away, you're not going to respond in the best way, especially if you get triggered a lot by each other. So pause. Some people have a separate email that only is for their ex or related to the divorce. Um, and some people have a friend or a family member open the email or read the text before they do, like if you really need to do that. So, and there are lots of parenting apps out there that can help you. They monitor tone. So if the tone is not respectful, they will flag it and maybe not allow it to go through. I also know a co-parenting app where they will actually change the words, and so they will redo the words and then send it to the person with less provocative words.
Yeah. And I love what you're talking about as far as this is not something that's going to happen overnight, right? That this is something that you have to have patience with. And when you're feeling so emotionally overwhelmed at the divorce, the loss of a relationship, grieving maybe that extended family that you're not going to be in communication with, worrying about the finances, there's a million things going through your head, and it's, can we get this done? Can we just get this done and over with? And I stress to people, this is not something that's going to happen overnight. The relationship didn't evolve overnight. The troubles in the relationship didn't happen overnight. The healing and that new journey is not going to happen overnight either. So the fact that in your expertise, you're also acknowledging this will take time. You have to be patient with it and you have to do the work, like the journaling, like the therapy. That's really, really important. So can you speak to that a little bit more as to maybe timelines or things that people ask you as far as like how quickly can I get this moving and why doesn't the co-parent speak to me the way that they should?
Well, so it's funny because when I work with people, I'm amazed at how quickly there are changes. They're not completely healed, but once we start working together and they come to me and they're like, well, he said this, and he did this or she did that. And I'm like, who cares what they do? Like it doesn't really matter what they say or do anymore. Let's, if we have to think about it because it has to do with your children, then, we can talk about it. But they're threatening you, so what? They don't have the power over you. And that happens a lot when people are, especially if there's a power imbalance in the relationship, and then you're going through divorce or you're divorced, and then they say something that's threatening. It like kicks you back into the relationship and you feel like they have this power of you, but they really don't anymore. So it's really important that you recognize that the person doesn't have the same power they did when you were married and living in the same house and working through things together. But so when you're going through divorce, I think there can be healing and there can be growth in this area, but it really is easier once the divorce is finalized, because there still feels like um, they can hurt you in big ways because you don't know what's going to happen in divorce. So the sooner you can get through that, the better, the quicker you're going to be able to heal. But some people do it while they're going through divorce. I'm amazed at things that I see people the growth that happens during the divorce.
Yeah, that's a really good point because the power that somebody has over you when you're living under the same roof is much more tangible and more real than when you're not living together. However, emotionally, it can still feel like they're still controlling you. They'll say that one thing that you know is going to hit you in the gut and that they know is going to hit you in the gut. And it can bring you right back to that. So, to transition to talk about therapy and the importance of therapy, I'm a divorce attorney. I've litigated for years. I don't litigate anymore. But the first thing that I will tell any client is, have you considered getting a therapist? Because I can help you in the legal realm, but I cannot help you in that therapy part of it where you need to start now detaching from that and maybe healing from that relationship. So the work that you do obviously is just so important as far as coaching parents and speaking to people about how it is that you can start to think about things differently. But as a therapist, it's probably a different role. So can you speak about the difference between therapy, doing that deep work, as opposed to divorce coaching or even co-parenting coaching?
Absolutely. And it is very different work. So it's important that you understand the differences. So therapy is for people who are really struggling emotionally. Um, Maybe there's some past issues in their childhood or from their past relationship that is traumatic or is really difficult to get through. Um, that's what therapy's for. You know, therapy, they really go deep into childhood issues, into your past, so that you can process it, so that you can heal. Um, you know, therapists have lots of different tools to do that, in terms of, you know, like cognitive behavioral therapy or interpersonal therapy. There's like, they're trained to with tools that can get you um, connected to things that have gone in the past and trauma that has happened in the past that you it's longer work, it's more intense work, um but a divorce coach is really about today and going forward. So a divorce coach will help you manage all the fires that are happening in your divorce or in your life right now and give you a plan for your future. Their coaches shouldn't go back into the past. That's not what their role is. That's not what their training is typically. And so they really are going to give you practical skills. They'll help you everything that the lawyers can't help you with related to your divorce, they will help you. They'll help you organize yourself. They'll help you make a plan for what they'll help you with budgeting potentially. You know, some divorce coaches have stronger skills with finance, some have stronger skills with parenting, you know, so it depends on the coach and their background. Um, you know, like I have an expertise in co-parenting, so that's one of my areas. I do have a background in finance, so I do work with people financially. Some coaches are attorneys and they'll give you legal strategies, you know, but they're not going to do the deep work, the deep healing work from your past like a therapist will.
And I love that because it's really about focusing on what it is that the person needs. When you were just talking about how a coach can help them from this point forward, you need to start looking to the future. You need to start making a plan for how it is that you're going to live separate and apart, how you're going to co-parent. But then beyond the immediate need of that, there might be the deep work that has to be done, and that's the therapy. And they don't have to be one or the other, right? They can go side by side. And oftentimes I think that they should, that you should have the therapist who's helping you do the deep work that will maybe help you start to reconcile, start to heal, and then that might help you in your path forward with the right coach.
Exactly. And, you know, you don't want to repeat patterns, right? You don't want to choose someone like you chose that ended in divorce. And a therapist will help you kind of look into that and see why you did that and how you can learn and grow and prevent that in the future. A therapist will not help you with the practical aspects of divorce. You know, that is not what a therapist's expertise is in. So a lot of times people will have both a therapist and a coach, and I do recommend that. Not always, but for people who need it, absolutely.
Oh, that is also a really good point because I have seen many divorces, and I know that many divorce attorneys have that second or third marriage. And the person who comes in, oftentimes I deal with women a lot, they'll say, wow, I married this second husband. I'm going through the same exact patterns, the same exact nonsense, the same exact hurt and trauma that I had in my first relationship because they didn't take the time to do that healing, to do that deeper dive and that self reflection as to how can I now change so that I'm not repeating those patterns? Because those patterns will stay if you don't address them and you don't start to make efforts to overcome them, to start working on yourself. And I mean, you're going to find the same relationship if you're not doing the work on yourself, for sure.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So then, how do you, in your role as a therapist, stay in that lane, and as a coach, stay in that lane? Is that not hard as a professional to kind of not jump from one to the other because you're so skilled in both?
Well, I mean, I definitely use some of my therapy skills in my coaching. Um, and I'm careful about that because I don't go into the deep therapy when I coach, but I'm using some of my skills because it's beneficial to my clients. And when I'm doing counseling, um, I I don't I don't usually use my coaching because as a therapist, you're ethically not supposed to tell people what to do. So there's a boundary, there's a lot more boundaries with therapy than there are with coaching. So I'm really more careful when I'm a therapist. Not, you're really not supposed to tell people what to do. You're supposed to listen and help them kind of figure things out for themselves. And I do that too in my coaching, but I'm really careful with my therapy clients. It's interesting.
Distinction because you're maybe guiding them a little bit more in the coaching and helping them explore and maybe guide on their own with the therapy, the kind of the back end work. So I love that distinction. And if somebody is looking for a great coach that's going to be a good fit for them, based on what you were saying before, some of them have maybe more of a financial background, some of them have more of a therapy background. What's the best way for someone to find the right fit for them as far as the best coach in their divorce?
Well, definitely ask their background and training and depending upon what they need. Like some people they've agreed to 50-50 and the parenting part isn't a problem. They get along as co-parents, but the financial part is really stressful and they're worried about that. So, you would want to look for a coach who can help you with that. I mean, a lot of times I will bring in a financial professional to, work with a client because, if it's a complicated financial situation, then you probably don't want a divorce coach unless they are a financial professional. So it's interesting because coaches can come from every different area. And that's true for mediators too, divorce mediators. There can be financial professionals who are mediators. There can be lawyers who are mediators. There can be therapists. I'm a certified mediator, so you want to know what professional will work for your situation, whoever you're hiring. And that's really, really important.
That's a really good point because, and you can go and ask them specifically, right? People sometimes feel like I'm speaking to a professional. I can't ask them that pointed question. Of course you can, right? So specifically, how can you help me with this issue that I have, financial, or whether it is about selling the house, or if it's about co-parenting, you can ask them, what is your experience with this? How can you help me with this? And if they say, I'm not as suited for that, that's okay. Then you find someone else. And then speaking of the co-parenting portion of how it is that you help and coach people, I'd just like to zoom out a little bit here and talk about how it is that you can help not only today, not only tomorrow, but the long-term impact of how your services can really help parents communicate effectively and co-parent effectively so that their kids are not just stuck in this battle forever.
So it's really, really important to get someone, if there's problems co-parenting, to get someone who has experience and who can help you with the co-parenting. Most attorneys, this is not something that they're trained in. So although they have a lot of experience with advising on the law, they're not going to be able to help you navigate co-parenting. And so you can have a co-parenting counselor. I do that. I was just talking to someone about who was interested in getting co-parenting counseling. Um, you can have a professional help you if that's necessary. But if you're just, trying to navigate co-parenting and there's no major issues, you really want to speak respectfully to each other. You want to have good communication. So, you can't assume things like you did when you were married. You have to over communicate because in the beginning, you have to get used to the fact that you're not going to be living together and you're not sharing a calendar on the wall that you're both looking at. I mean, how are you going to let each other know about things that are going on with the kids? And if you have more than one kid, if you have two or three kids, it can get complicated. So you have to have a mechanism that you're going to be able to communicate with, whether that's a co-parenting app. You can even use a Google Calendar. You have to talk about how you're going to do expenses for the children. Like, for example, in my divorce, we didn't share child expenses that were under $100. But when you were buying school supplies, each expense wasn't $100, but all of it together was a couple $100 for each child, right? And so in the beginning of the school year, who's going to buy all of those? How are you going to split it? Like you have to have those conversations and you have to make sure as much as you can is put into the agreement. But if it's not put into the agreement, make sure you work that out before you buy something or before you say, okay, that your child can go, or do something or be involved in an extracurricular activity. And a lot of times parents will not agree. And what do you do then? And that's where the co-parenting counseling can come in. You could go back to mediation. I mean, I don't recommend that because, if you can work it out yourselves, that's better. And what I tell people is, choose your battles, right? You're not going to agree on everything and you think everything is so important for your children, but sometimes you worry too much. We worry too much. I did that too. And you really have to think about it and talk it through with someone you trust. Do I really need to fight this battle? My ex doesn't agree that to do this, to do the gymnastics class on, every Saturday. Is that really necessary? Are they doing enough other things? So I think you have to be a little bit more flexible than you would be if you were married and you could just sign them up and you would talk it through and you'd agree or they'd let you do whatever you want. Now people, it's different when you're divorced because there's a lot of things you have to make decisions on and you may not agree on them all and they're not all worth fighting for.
Yeah, and I love the sort of over communication or learning to recommunicate in a different way, because if you're not and you're battling over school supplies, I've actually had cases where people have battled over school supplies and one parent will say to the kids, "Well, I can't get you those supplies because mom or dad didn't contribute." And the kids are stuck in the middle with, what do I have to do with this, right? If you two are not able to work out whatever it is, buying the kids school supplies, as simple as that, then the kids are going to feel it. They're going to know it. And that's the last thing that the children should be experiencing as non-participants here. They had nothing to do with this. They are just trying to live their life, love both parents, and go to school with the right supplies. So without the tools and the techniques to be able to coexist, to co-parent, to communicate properly, to learn how to communicate differently, then really you're setting your children up for failure.
Absolutely. And we don't realize how significant it is when a child is put in the middle like that. Anytime you say like, well, your other parent didn't pay for something, so I'm not going to get that for you. I mean, maybe you can't afford it, and then I get that. But if you can buy them a few things and not have them understand the financial parts of it and keep them protected from that, then do that. Because is it worth it to hurt your children emotionally like that? You have to ask yourself every time. And I'm not saying for someone who's really struggling financially, to buy them what they can't afford, absolutely not. It's more about the point, right? It's like you're doing, and I tell people all the time, you have to bite your tongue, you have to be the bigger person, and you have to really protect your children from, being put in the middle because, like you said, that really does affect them. And if you, whatever you can do to protect them from that, you really need to do.
And I'm in my 50s now, and my parents went through a very ugly divorce when I was 9. And again, 40 something years ago, I remember, right? Still now, I remember how ugly it was, how violent it got, how completely and utterly hopeless and helpless I felt. Like, what am I supposed to do? Just standing there watching the two people that I love more than anything in the world, like yelling and fighting about right now, maybe in the moment it didn't feel like, but right now looking at like nonsense, just fighting about whatever you're fighting about. In my world, as a child, what did I have to do with that? Why did I have to be a part of that? So the work that you do, which I would like to think wasn't available then, and maybe my parents didn't have access to it, and if they did, it was very, very limited. But the work that you do is so important for people now. And just know that as a parent, if you choose to work with Jill, or you choose to get a coach, a co-parenting expert, someone who can help you, you can save your children from that trauma, because your divorce story is going to be your children's divorce story. And it's going to reflect how it is that they can now navigate relationships, problem solve, have better self-esteem. I mean, it's just so much bigger than we're going to fight about the school supplies. It's so much bigger than that.
Right. And we don't remember what it's like being children. It's amazing that you have that experience so that you can, as an attorney, be able to understand that. And what I tell people is like really try to put yourself back. Like remember what it was to be a child and how little control you had over so many things. And if your parents don't have their stuff together, that's really scary. That's really scary for a child. And it really, it's hard to remember because we're going through all these things, as adults, and we're struggling, but it's even harder on them. So yeah, the more you can remember what that feels like, the better parent you'll be.
Yeah, I agree. And I think as we all do the best that we can. And if the best that we can is to at least just get a co-parenting coach like you involved, it really will go such a long way, because any tools, techniques, tips that you give people and the people use them, I assure you it's going to help you, even just with that communication, even just with biting your lip while your children are there and changing the tone of the conversation, using some of those co-parenting apps that you were talking about. Take one, right? You take one of those steps and it's going to help you for sure. And it's certainly going to help your children. So I commend you for the work that you do, and for really putting children first, because again, you don't want your children's divorce story to be one of trauma. It can just be one of, my parents are no longer living together, but they're both my parents, and ideally I know that they're both there for me. So as a therapist, as a coach, as a professional in all the ways that you help people, what's, say, one tip that you would give to parents who are undergoing divorce, if you can just give them one takeaway?
Well, I think it's not going to be forever this bad. It will get better. And get the support when you need it because the more support you get, the faster is that it will get better. But yeah, it is one of the most difficult things that anybody can go through. And it feels like it's never going to end, but it does end. Nobody stays in their divorce forever. And you do get to have a post-divorce life, which for most people is pretty great.
I think that's the best advice, because when we're overwhelmed with emotion, we think this is it. This moment is everything, but it's not. With the right tools and the right support, you can move forward, and like you said, you can create your best future. So I love that. Thank you, Jill, so much for joining us and for giving us such powerful examples of how we can be better professionals, for sure, to incorporate somebody like you, but also as parents to really focus on our kids and do what's best for us going forward. So I'd love to hear about your your book. I'd love to hear about the resources that you have. I know you run a Facebook page that is just absolutely fantastic. So tell us how people can reach you and how people can possibly work with you.
Absolutely. So, my website is divorcecoachjill.com. You can get my book on my website. It's called I'm Getting Divorced Now What? I also have a free guide you can get on my website. It's 8 guidelines for separated and divorcing parents. And my Facebook group, I have 7,500 people in it now. It's called Separation and Divorce Support Community. It's a great community of people who are struggling with the same thing, and it's free, and you can join it and get support there. Um, and I have an online course that's based on my book also, that is a great way to get information.
And can we access the online course through your website as well?
Yes,
Okay,
yes, through my
great.
website. Yep.
All right. Well, anyone out there who wants more support, I've been on the Facebook page, and I mean, just so many people helping each other and supporting each other and really giving each other a pep talk if that's all they need. So I encourage everyone to go check it out. And I know how much time and energy it takes to run things that you don't get paid for in these Facebook groups or other organizations. So I thank you so much for doing that, because it's really a huge resource to people, and anyone out there who wants to take advantage of it, please do. So thank you so much, Jill, again for joining us. And I would love for anyone who's watching to drop a comment and let us know if there's anything else that you'd like to ask about co-parenting, therapy, coaching, anything. We will certainly be happy to have Jill come back and take a deeper dive into that. But in the meantime, thank you so much for joining us here on Divorce Den. And certainly check out all of Jill's resources, and we'll talk soon. Thank you.
Thank you.